Unreal unveils unbelievable undulating demo of their Unreal Engine 5. Ridley Scott says that the maker of Alien, I've screwed this up again, Alien and the Apple Mac original commercial producer, wow, has inked a deal to develop TV shows for Apple TV through his Scott-free production company. There may be an audio version of Apple News Plus on the way, and China may no longer be the only supply chain in town for Apple. This has been like the most awkward beginning of this show ever. And all of that tonight on the Mac to the Future Livecast. Just stick with us. We'll get there. And good evening, everyone. How are all of you today? This is the take two of the Mac to the Future Livecast. Go. And putting up with me, because that just seems to be the kind of way things are working tonight, is Warren Sklar and Mr. Dave Ginsburg. How are you gentlemen this evening? Other than
good and great.
My usual problems.
Are we live?
I think we are live now.
Are we live now?
I'm not quite sure how it happened. Warren is rocking. He is rocking that Howard Cosell look from the 70s.
I'm live from Guatemala.
He's got two watches, too.
I got two watches.
Not one, but two. Kind of like this show tonight, yeah. One watch, two watch, one start, two starts.
Demo that later. So.
You're going to demo a watch band or a watch?
A watch.
Okay, good, because I don't think anyone wants to see a demo of a band. How are you, Dave?
Close.
Doing well. Having lots of fun here. There's always something with your technology challenges.
Yeah. I can be technologically challenged at times. And the weird thing was, I was watching something with you guys know Carl Madden, right? Mac and Forth show. He started using Ecamm Live, which, to be honest, while I love Ecamm's call recorder software, I'm not a big fan of Ecamm Live. I just don't. I think it's kind of a clumsy product. But he was doing really, really well with it, and I was kind of giving him crap about it. And then here I am, not even 3-4 hours later. It's like, yeah, man. I got everything going on. I got it all working. That's me. Take two. So that's how sometimes that's sometimes how it works. All right. We have a couple of quick takes tonight. Everyone still seems so convinced that next year will be the start of the transition to ARM processors for the Mac, even though Apple themselves have said absolutely nothing. Are you guys convinced at all that Apple's going to go to ARM next year?
I'm not convinced either way. I mean, it could happen. It could
not
happen.
either.
And who cares?
Well, it's going to be a big deal.
I mean, they're not going to do it if it happens, and they're not going to do it if it's a huge deal. If it's going to like change the landscape of the users in that much of a way, they're not going to do it. If it's going to be something that they think they could do without affecting their Mac users too much, they'll do it. So, I mean,
well, I can't see how they could do any of it without severely affecting all the Mac users out there.
How come? Tell me.
That's like a huge transition with both hardware and software. So
right,
people, like, for example, and the same thing happened when they switched to Intel. All of the hardware that they had in the chain, people stopped buying because they knew that within a year to a year and a half that everything was going to go Intel. And it's why when they did go to Intel, that they sped up the transition to it by probably, I think, like almost a year. So they got like all the stuff that they had in the pipeline, they rushed out because nobody was buying the old PowerPC stuff.
Right, but that affects Apple more than the users. I mean, there it doesn't.
Right. However,
as a user, I have one Mac, from 2021 that runs on Intel, and I have one Mac from 2022 that runs ARM, and they both run the software pretty much the same, and it looks the same. And as a user,
well, for now, but there's, I mean, there would have to be some kind of compatibility layer,
sure,
to transition people from Intel software to ARM software, but typically it doesn't work with everything, and there will be developers who don't make the switch. That the business that they do on the Mac just isn't high enough to make it worth their while. So,
but Apple's not dumb. They're not going to make a switch to a system that's not going to work for a good amount of their user base. It's not like
it's not up to Apple. It's up to developers for their software. Apple can't force developers to update their software to ARM, and they would have to tell developers well in advance of switching to ARM in order to prepare them for making such a switch.
Well, the same thing happened with 32-bit apps in Catalina. They can't force developers to update their apps. They've given plenty of notice. Right. They've given plenty of notice. Yeah. I mean, so if the developer, wants to continue life in the
Mac
computer world, or whatever, then they got to do it. But, computers, software becomes obsolete on a lot of things, and it's if it makes sense for the company to make faster, cheaper computers, and believe me, if the computer is faster and hopefully cheaper for the consumer, then it will take off, and developers, more computers will be sold, and developers will be incentive to keep up with their software. So that's how it's going to happen. But what I do know 100% is Apple's not going to make the switch if it means a complete catastrophic event for its users. They're not going to do that. So, it will be something gradual, and it will be something that's, will continue to work for years in the interim.
Well,
okay, what do you think, Dave?
I had to ask something first. You said you had the Mac that was from maybe it was Mac to the Future, 2021 and 2022.
Well,
he was talking. Okay, yeah.
This is when they're going to come. Yeah, Mac to the Futures.
Okay, that's what you're saying, when they're going to come out. Okay, I just want to make sure I understood that. Okay.
Okay.
I agree with Warren. I think it's definitely, Apple's not going to just flip a switch and say, hey, we're on ARM, and that's the end of it. I mean, they have to go through extensive testing, a lot of warning ahead of time. Yeah, it's not something they're just going to dive right into. I mean, it took a while with the transition between the PowerPC and Intel back in the old days.
Not that long. I mean, the longer transition, and you have to remember, I go back like all the way to 1987 with the Mac. The transition between the Motorola 68K chips and PowerPC, that took a while. That was actually a rather long transition. And even the transition to OS 10 from, the classic OS took a couple of years. But when they made the switch to Intel, it was like speedy quick. There was like no pussyfooting around. It was like, okay, because you have to remember that the lead time for all of this hardware, everything that you see right now was designed for the most part a year and a half ago, if not longer, because it takes time to prepare the supply chain. It takes time to get manufacturers ready. So the stuff that is going to be coming out in 2021, it's already set in stone as far as what it's going to be.
When they made the switch to Intel, Apple was in dark times with the Mac. Not
really.
Yeah,
because 2001, 2002, when the iMac first came out. I mean, that was huge.
Those were dark times, but not 2005.
No, when they started coming back.
they started coming back, but nothing like now. They did not have the iPhone to fall back on.
No, but they'd had 4 years of the iPod, which had built up their cash reserves quite a bit.
They had a little bit, but it was not. It was.
And iTunes.
They were definitely not as strong as they are today, as a company. Sure. And the Mac and the Mac product product on PowerPC wasn't that important as a Mac on Intel as today, because there's a lot more critical things going on than back then.
Well, sure, but the Mac, I mean, essentially in 2005, which is when the transition started to Intel, there were 2 products for Apple. You had the Mac computers and you had iPods, and that was it. And the Mac was the strongest product line that they had. That was where most of the money was coming in, up until the iPhone was released in 2007. So when they made the switch to Intel and people stopped buying the older PowerPC machines, they had to really, really quickly speed it up, because that was like the whole company.
Well, they also had Rosetta that allows some of the apps to run for a few years after that, until finally that disappeared. So
they'll have a but not everything worked with Rosetta.
Yeah, no, I know, but maybe they'll have that type of transition. It's hard to say, or they'll stay with Intel, which will lead to the next quick take with the Intel processor.
Yeah. Which leads to the rumor that Intel may make their Core i7 28-watt Ice Lake 4-core CPU an Apple exclusive. With all of the ARM rumors, do you think that this could be a desperation ploy by Intel to try to keep Apple happy?
Could be. I mean, Intel's been in some dire straits for a while. The upper management's had a lot of change. New CEO. The company's been laying people off. It's been some tough times for Intel right now, and it's definitely been interesting times to see where everything is as far as that goes. So I would not be at all surprised if something like this happened. Why not? I mean, Apple's is a big customer to be supplying them a lot of chips, and can't see why Intel couldn't make it an exclusive offer for a chip. So.
What do you think, Warren?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much what he said. But we forget that Intel does. It's not like they're terribly slow with upgrading their stuff. They're just not as fast as maybe Apple wants them. But they update every year, and they try to come out with something. And all the people start talking about how thin the chip is and how hot and how fast and things like that. They're every year they're going to release something. What is it? It's a
Moore's Law.
Moore's Law.
Which is that's pretty much has been out the window for a while.
It still kind of happens. So I mean, what is it? Smaller, faster, thinner is basically Moore's Law every year.
No, Moore's Law stated that chips would be twice as fast within, I think, like an 18-month period, and. Right. What's happened, they kind of hit a brick wall as far as clock speed goes. They couldn't really take it too much faster without, I think, seriously bending the laws of physics. So what they did instead was they went to multiple cores, and then everybody made their operating systems multiple core friendly, and software became multiple core friendly. So while the chip speeds themselves haven't become faster, the fact that you have more cores and more threads means that you're able to do more stuff at the same time. Right. So it's kind of a 6 of one, half dozen of another.
In any case, Apple's going to stay with Intel as long as they could, as long as the pros are happy with their machines and they, they work. And, Apple has done pretty good things this year with that. And they've put out a Mac Pro that's probably more computing power than anybody's using any of it, partially. I'm sure, it's going into all the editors and the movie studios, and I'm sure it's doing what it needs to do. And the MacBook Pro is 16 inches good. So, until people start saying, hey, Steven Spielberg calls up Tim Cook and says, listen, I'm trying to, my editors are trying to do this movie and it's taking, 4 days instead of 4 hours, then, it's not going to be a problem. So as long as Intel will suffice, I don't think Apple needs to move off them unless there's a real advantage of it, which would probably be cost and their own control of making the chip.
Yeah, that's having control over everything has never been an Apple philosophy.
No, they don't want that. In fact, no. they let dogs and kids run around to the Apple headquarters all the time, like on fire.
Cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria.
It is true. This guy has no dick.
Okay, moving on to the main stories quickly. Virtual reality and augmented reality aside, the Unreal graphics engine has been powering some of the best games around for decades. And their new graphics engine, labeled in a fit of originality, Unreal Engine 5, looks pretty impressive. They demoed some of that capability with an impressive run through a shattered cave with billions of triangles, making everything look amazing. So what does that mean for us? Epic has also announced that besides all the usual suspects, the Mac and iOS will be included in the fund. Now, if we can only get developers on board, which has always been the problems when it comes to gaming on the Mac, is getting developers to get interested. But what do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. The developers, getting developers interested in this.
Developers. It
was right in my head. Steve Ballmer's tirade.
Crazy guy.
If only there was a conference next month to talk to people.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say right there is with WWDC coming up in a few weeks, about a little under a month. I would not be surprised if developers are going to be starting to look at this a little closer, but because the Mac platform it's here to stay. I mean, it's it's competitive, and I definitely think something like this is definitely possible with the gaming and getting some more interesting games on a Mac versus a PC. So,
do you think that it'll be more Mac or more iOS?
Probably a combination of both, I would think. I mean, obviously, gaming with arcade is big. So if they could do some of this type of technology with a lot of the games that are a part of arcade, that's definitely a possibility too. Because arcades are relatively popular.
It has
now,
been.
So yeah. So I mean, you got that as well.
Okay, Warren.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't game that much. I'm not a serious gamer. My son does on his Xbox, and he's been asking for a gaming computer. He has a MacBook Pro for school, and he can't do much on it. And he's been asking for a gaming computer for a while, but he just plays his Xbox. So there's definitely an issue that kids 16, 17-year-old can't play a game on his Mac that he wants to play. Right. But most kids aren't saying, I wish there were more games on my Mac at this point. I think most kids are saying, if I want a game, I'm buying an Xbox or a PS4 or a gaming computer. But also, I think a lot of kids are super happy having games on their iPhone too, and they certainly play them all day, and it's easy to do. So I don't think there's a huge market still for Mac-based games. I think there's just too much other players out there to get involved with that. I think Apple has a pretty good foot in the market of handheld type games. Between them and a Switch is pretty much it. And I think pretty much, they're probably making a lot of money. Even without Apple Arcade, they're making a great amount of money with the App Store. They get a good cut. I'm sure they're making lots of money off that. As far as developers running games, it's 2020. I mean,
where they've been.
Right. I mean, this is nothing's changed. Where they could have done this 10 years ago, 5 years ago. I mean, the hardware's there. I mean, it's not like the Mac. It's literally the same type of hardware that goes into a PC. It's just packaged nicely. So if they haven't done it now, I don't think Apple's pushing for it that much. They would be pushed. It would have happened.
I think one of the big problems for gaming is no support for DirectX on the Mac. and that's where most developers are. I'm not a developer, and I'm not a programmer, so I couldn't say one way or the other whether or not, or how easy or how hard it would be to support DirectX. I know that through a program like Wine and some of the other emulators, even though Wine is not an emulator, that that there's DirectX support there, and that's basically running through OS 10. Yeah, so somebody much smarter than me would have to answer that question.
From what somebody said, Mac has its own version of DirectX.
Yeah, Metal.
Metal's a newer one, but there was something even before that.
Yeah. Oh, we were just talking about that.
I forget what it was called too, but
OpenGL.
Yeah.
Wasn't that it? OpenGL?
That was a web thing. OpenGL
is like
a web thing too. And in any case, it doesn't matter. But you got a $2,000 MacBook Pro. You would think somewhere in that chassis is something that could run a game, despite what kind of technology is running the graphic engine behind it now. Or they could stick in, they could easily, you could take a Mac Pro now and stick in that $3,000 GPU into it. So there's got to be ways to make it happen. It's just I don't think it's a priority.
Okay. Well then let's move on to Ridley Scott, the director and producer of such films as Aliens, Black Hawk Down, and TV shows like Man in the High Castle, has signed a deal with his Scott-free production company for a multi-year deal with Apple to create new content for the Apple TV. There's been a lot of really, really big names that have gotten involved with Apple TV, and I honestly don't see that much content coming out. You constantly hear about all these exclusives for Hulu or for Amazon Prime or for Netflix, and Apple's like, okay, here's a series. Yeah, here you go. Here's a series. And then you don't hear anything else that much about it. Warren?
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
Sorry.
That's all right. What can I say? We're watching Defending Jacob, and that's been good. There's very few shows on Netflix or Hulu or TV that I watch and say, wow, this is changing my life. There's a few, but this one's good. It's fine. We like it. But like you said, every Hulu or Netflix has to have a few reasons to subscribe to it, and it doesn't have to be
exclusive reasons, right?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be 100 things, but it has to be one good show. Like a good example is my wife wants to watch something called Miss America or Mrs. America, which is on I think that's Epix through Hulu or something like that. And she's like, I don't want to pay for it, but I want to watch it. And it's like, well, if you want to watch it, you're going to pay for it.
Right.
So
actually, Epix was being offered for free through the TV app. So
for a while, but just like some of the other shows, it's not that long and it's not all out. It's not dumped out at once. They're still releasing shows every week. So like Defending Jacob is only on episode 4. So, in any case, if there's a compelling reason to watch a show, people will pay to do it. If there's a good show on Apple that people want to watch, they're going to pay to do it. I personally don't have. I have Netflix, but I don't have it because I don't sit there and watch. Flick through. I'm not that bored where I'm sitting through and scrolling through what's on Netflix every day.
Right.
Somebody tells me you got to watch this, and then basically I go and watch it. So. Yeah, Ridley Scott. Woohoo, he's good. I remember him.
I remember him from the 80s. Yeah, he directed the famous Apple 1984 ad, so he's got some connection to Apple. And but no, I agree. I just finished watching Ozark on Netflix, and Ozark was a great series. It really got me riveted.
I stopped at first season. Yeah, I should have kept going.
Did you? Yeah, no,
Yeah,
it's good.
Yeah. There's half of the second season we gave up. So.
No, it had some slow moments, but I mean, again, that's any of these series, you just kind of stick with it. But even Apple TV, the TV Plus, there's a lot of content I haven't even watched other than the morning show. I've already watched all that, but I think there was a movie, The Banker, I think it was called.
So, it was held back for a while.
That's on there, and I want to go watch that. It looked really interesting. So I mean, there's a lot of good content. It's taken them a little while to do it. But then you got to look at Disney Plus. Disney Plus is really rocking it. They just got exclusive to show Hamilton in July.
Yeah, that's going to be big. A lot of people.
It's going to be huge.
I got people posting on Facebook, how do I get this for free? I need to watch Hamilton for free. I'm like,
give me a break. Well, $6.99.
But it's the difference. It's the difference between
people hate paying money.
A service like Disney Plus, which a huge chunk of is already created content. Stuff that all the Avengers stuff, all the Star Wars stuff. This is all stuff that has been around for a very, very long time. Whereas everything on Apple TV is all brand new content. There's nothing there that's recycled.
Right, but that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. I mean,
it's just a difference in philosophy.
Yeah, like Disney Plus. I don't have it, but if I have it, I'm getting it because of The Mandalorian and probably Hamilton at this point. So, I mean, I've seen every Marvel movie. I've seen every Star Wars movie. I have no desire to watch them again. It takes one show that you want to watch. And the good thing with all these services, including Apple TV, is it's cancelable any time. If you want to watch, spend $15 for 3 months to watch something, and then cancel it, then you cancel it. So.
Okay, well let's move on to the next story.
What did that say?
News in an audio format. How novel.
Like a book.
Yeah.
If there's one service that has been lagging behind in Apple's most successful portfolio, it's been the News Plus service. In an effort to break out of the screen-only read, Apple may soon be offering audio versions of at least some of their regular content if producers of that content agree. No word on how the audio will be produced, whether it's with real live people or something like Siri, or in what kind of format the articles will be presented. I'm not really sure how they would do this. I mean, would you have real live people read these stories in like an anchor desk kind of thing, and then just put them up in a YouTube like format so that as people are interested, they could read them? It seems to me that would be very, very labor intensive. Whereas if they can use something like Siri and a good reader program, then they could get this out relatively quickly. I think that the only problem with that approach is if the voice is too artificial. It's kind of what's that term? Something Valley, where something sounds almost human but isn't quite, and it's kind of off-putting.
Android Valley?
No, I can't think of it. It's Happy Valley or something like that.
Valley of the Dolls. What's the other one? What's the one with the? What's the one with the Stepford Wives?
Stepford Wives. Well, what do you think, Dave?
Well, I think it's very possible they'd have a human read this, and I think they would keep it just audio. I don't know if video would be as ideal for this. If they want, especially reading, you're reading something like the LA Times or the Wall Street Journal, any newspapers, or even any news stories for that matter. I think it would be audio, like Audible. They have, they obviously have books doing that. Well, they got, I think there's a daily Wall Street Journal, daily briefing that comes out. They do that, and even on Amazon Echo, they have a daily briefing on there too. Why not having a briefing just like that on News Plus as well? But you also got to remember, it's not only they have news, they have magazines, and I don't think they're going to dive into that end of it. I think it's just going to be more the current news that they curate.
I don't think you could take a monthly or even a weekly magazine and cull articles from it and have it be read, in an audio format, and have that bring anything to the table.
They need to act it out. It's going to be the current. They need actors to act out the news. Yeah. Sorry.
Well, and maybe Jennifer Aniston,
He's like somebody, like Donald Trump played by like.
Or they hire
Donald Trump
voiceover people.
Yeah, I don't know.
Fiverr, go to Fiverr.
It'll be interesting. They've got to generate some interest with this. I resubscribed for a month because they were offering some interesting news for this month, and I may just cancel it again. But that's the nice thing about it. You can have it for a month, and if you decide you don't want it anymore, you get rid of it.
I don't think I even did the 30-day trial with it. I think I basically just use the free version, and I don't even really use it that much.
Well, you also got to think of it this way, and I just did this. I just reviewed this app during my Apple user group meeting yesterday. There's a lot of apps out there that allow to use your local public library. You can sign into this app, and then it gives you access to things like the Los Angeles Times and the Chicago Tribune and a lot of other newspapers for free, and you don't even have to pay for it because your taxes are already paying for it through your library. So you have those other types of places. Overdrive's another one I know that's been in the news too. With being able to listen to books and or checking out books through your library as well. So they got to compete with that too. So it's not just the news. I mean, even the New York Times is part of this app where it allows you to sign in, get an account with the New York Times, and not have to pay for a subscription. So it's all part of it, and you can use the New York Times app. So that's only one of the few I saw that does actually work with that. So
okay, you guys ready to move on?
Yeah.
All right. Apple may move some production out of China. If there's one thing that has been learned by most major electronic producers, is that having all of your production eggs in one basket can lead to serious consequences if the supply chain is interrupted. Taiwan's Foxconn should probably be looking over their shoulder as the #1 producer of Apple gear, as Apple themselves may be encouraging a company called Luxshare to buy into another Asian company known for making the aluminum casings for iPhones and MacBooks. If true, this would not only keep the supply chains less likely to be disrupted, but would allow Apple to negotiate better terms with existing suppliers. Now, if there's one thing, or a couple things that Apple has done very, very well in the Tim Cook area has been supply chain. With the exception of current conditions, which I don't think anyone could have anticipated. Apple's supply chain has been the stuff of legend as far as other companies go. I don't think there's any other company out there that handles their supply chain as well as Apple does, especially when you consider just the sheer volume of smaller electronics, whether it's iPhones or whether it's AirPods or anything along those lines. They crank them out by the millions and make sure that everyone that wants to buy product can buy product. Warren?
They're good with it. I think a lot of it's artificial too, which is good marketing. They limit, when new things come out, they're initially not as easy to get right away. But I think that's intentional, to be honest with you. I think they probably could make that different. Creates a hype. But as far as moving things to different production, this has been talked about forever. I think it was, even when Trump first started, he wanted Tim Cook was talking about moving one to Texas. I don't know if he did that or America or something like that. So
there was a plant. There was a Foxconn plant that was open, I think, in Wisconsin, but it's like
they attempted
barely doing anything.
It's not doing anything. It was because it's screens. It was TV. It was TV screens. Because that's close to me here. So
Right. So I mean,
and they're not really doing anything there.
No.
Right. So I mean, again, people go to China because they have the process and they have the people and they have the low wages. So that's how it is. I mean, if they can move it, they will, and they should. But it's not. We talked about it before. It's not like it's not easy. I mean, between getting the parts to the new facility and finding people who could do it, and paying.
Well, and all the automation that's involved as well.
There's a lot of automation, but a lot of it's not automation. I mean, you hear horror stories about the Foxconn, the Foxconn factory. You hear, you hear horror stories, but they don't complain because it's work.
It's a job.
If it wasn't them, then it would be nothing or less. So I mean, it's they have that kind of system, but as we saw with the virus, that's a problem. And now, it's not just going to be the virus. It's going to be other issues down in history. There's going to be more issues with it, political and, natural disasters. And I mean, in any case, it's bad to have a place that could not work out and only have that one place. So you want to spread it out.
Okay. That's pretty much all I got for the show this week. Do either one of you have anything that you want to talk about before we wrap it up?
I have stuff I bought. I want to show you what I bought.
Oh yeah. That's right. Crap Warren bought this week. What did you buy?
Yeah. All right. So
tell us.
The Surface Pro Go and then his watch.
Yeah. Well, no more than that. So I got the Brian McCullough on the Tech Meme Ride Home said for $18 they had a smartwatch on Amazon with a coupon, so I bought it. It's actually not terrible. I mean, it looks just like the Apple Watch, and it does notifications. It doesn't have a speaker, microphone, or anything like that. It's actually not bad. So I kind of
who makes it?
I don't know.
Just so
$18.
What does it connect up to your phone or?
Yeah, it does. It does notifications and it does wait.
Is there an app?
Yeah, it's an app. Supposedly, it's got a heart rate sensor too. That kind of works maybe sometimes. Anyway,
don't rely on it.
Wait,
don't put your life in the hands of an $18 watch.
I guess we'll have to talk about it tomorrow.
It's made by Arbly, ARBLL. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. Possible.
They make beer also, Billy Beer.
Billy Beer.
Yeah. Billy
so
Beer.
I got that.
Remember that?
I remember Billy.
I had my beer can collection. I got the can. Billy Beer.
So I got that. I got a refurbished black leather case for my phone.
Nice.
I just put it in today. I got a Wi-Fi 6 range extender for my network. So now instead of 300 megabits per second ish, I'm getting about 400 megabits per second ish.
Can you really tell the difference?
Can
you really tell the difference between 300 and 400 megabits per second?
When I do a speed test, I can.
Oh, okay. Well, thumbs up.
And what did that cost?
What does it matter?
It was $150.
Maybe I want to buy it. Someone's getting some ice.
That's my wife getting ice. She's right.
Hi, Brenda.
Hi, Brenda.
Well, she obviously can't hear you. I got the headphones on. But...
Doesn't matter. You could tell her that Guy and Dave say hi, Brenda.
They said hi, Brenda. She said hi. And then, of course, I got
to keep this on the show.
All right, now, Warren, I've got to say this.
Yes.
Thus far, you are the only person who's had their wife on the show.
Almost happened, but she's in her pajamas.
I think Dave's
audio.
Dave's wife made an appearance once on one of the shows. I heard her in the background screaming once.
That's usually how my wife talks to me.
Well, that's how I get talked to too. But she's in a good mood now, so what can I tell you?
I would be too.
Yeah.
She's going to live in Chicago soon.
This is my friend that lives in Chicago. They're talking about Chicago. So, okay. Yeah. Well, we're not living in Chicago yet.
We're not living in Chicago.
Well, we will.
That's where my mother is from. She was from Harvard, Illinois.
We'll live in Chicago next year when Jacob goes to school. We're moving to Chicago. Any case. That's most of it. And, of course, the thing I'm on. So.
Okay. Well, I think that is going to do it for this week. Warren, if people wanted to get a hold of you and ask you questions about your $18 smartwatch, how would they do it?
Oh, wait. It lit up. Oh, man. Wait. I don't know.
The Apple Watch does that, too.
No. The green. It does green on the back. Yeah.
Well, just save it for tomorrow.
Yes. This show, Dave's show, and sometimes Twitter.
And Guatemala. Right. Okay. Dave?
Well, intouchwithios.com is the podcast. Warren's the co-host. We got a guest coming on tomorrow night, Victor Cayo. I can't wait. He's a good guy. It's a lot of fun.
He is.
Old-timer podcaster. And I remember, what was this podcast? The Typical Mac
Typical
podcast,
Mac user.
Typical Mac user. Yeah, that was it. So I'm looking forward to catching up with him. I saw him at CES and hung out with us, and so that'll be fun. So and then president of the Suburban Chicago Apple users had a great session yesterday with my iPhone class, and had over 40 people come out. So I think this pandemic, this virus, and everybody having to do things from home is really starting to spark some cool content out there. So. I definitely like doing it. So
it's certainly driving up prices of all the associated gear.
Yes, it is. But $200 webcams that just should be only $70.
At most.
And you catch me on Twitter. I'm on Twitter at DaveG65. Come
okay.
listen to us on the podcast.
That's tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Eastern time.
Yes,
sounds good. And if you'd like to get a hold of me, my email address is guy@mymac.com. You can help support the things that I do by going to patreon.com/MacParrot, coffee, ko-fi.com/MacParrot, or, God, I'm losing my mind. What was the other one?
Something about a shark.
No. There was another way, something.me. PayPal. There we go. PayPal. The parrot has just freaked me out. PayPal.me/MacParrot. There we go. You can get me on the Twitters. I am MacParrot, and I'm also Vert Shark, which we'll talk about that another time. I think that is going to about do it for this evening. Thank you all so very, very much for joining us this evening. However it is that you have consumed this show, it is greatly appreciated by all three of us. And hopefully we will see you all next week on the Mac to the Future livecast. Go. Oh, YouTube. My name, Guy Searle. Like, share, subscribe. Like, share, subscribe. That's how it goes. And there's a parrot that's just killing it out there. Say goodnight, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah, see? That works.